you're going to note that most of the components of the revised plan are the same as they were for the original plan. It changes from 4 phases to 3, and that's a significant change. But many of the components, most of them remain unchanged. The very first change that you will notice, however, is preschool. One of the things that the PACT team heard loud and clear is that there needs to be a bigger acknowledgement of the importance of preschool in the draft master plan. So what we've added is the preschool component to Phase 1. Identify facilities for renovation for 2 or more additional preschool locations. This makes it, makes the goal more concrete. It's a part of our written part of our plan, and that's as a result of the input that was received over the PACT 2 process. The building of 2 new elementary schools is the same as the 4-phase draft that you saw previously in June. Renovation is another area where there has been some evolution, where there have been some revisions. The first thing I want you to note is that the comprehensive renovation in the high schools on the original plan was to occur in phases. Benton was to be comprehensively renovated in Phase 1, Central in Phase 2, and Lafayette in Phase 3. In some ways, there is some inequality there in some schools being able to be renovated sooner. This portion, this revised plan, takes the comprehensive renovation of the 3 high schools and moves it into Phase 3. So I think that's actually a more equitable way to address the high school needs. The other change that you'll note is that synthetic turf in the original plan was included in Phase 2. It has been removed from this plan. That was from feedback from board members who felt that it might give the community the wrong information. So what work you will note for the high schools is that air conditioning will occur in all 3 high schools in Phase 1. They'll all receive triage in 10 work, which means that the work that's necessary to maintain healthy and safety facilities. Then you'll see that Benton will receive the planning principle work and security work. Planning principles, just to remind you, were the types of work items that we heard over and over and over again. Actually, the local architects heard, and by the way, all 3 firms are here again tonight. They heard consistently during the building walkthrough. So we need environmental issues addressed, site issues addressed. We need proper places for special education. We need proper, our buildings need to be accessible to people with disabilities. So that's the planning principle work, and it's scheduled for every building. At Central, in Phase 1, the auditorium will undergo a comprehensive renovation, the auditorium. At Lafayette, there will be biology labs that are renovated. So that's the Phase 1 work at the high school level. At the elementary level and at the middle school level, the important change as a result of the input that we received was that air conditioning is moved into Phase 1. This is important for a lot of reasons. It's not just a comfort issue. There are a number of studies that correlate building condition with student achievement. I don't recall if you remember, but during the PACT planning process, we presented a lot of research that correlated building condition and its effect on student achievement, particularly student absenteeism. There's a great new study that correlates that effect, and of course, while it's predictable, it's always worse for the lower socioeconomic income levels. So air conditioning, my proposal is that is an educational issue as much as it is a comfort issue. Expansion of the 6 classroom additions at the elementary schools is the same as you saw in the draft master plan. And then one of the other revisions is where facilities are retired. Hull, Humboldt, and Noyes are proposed to be retired in Phase 1. You'll recall that in the draft master plan, Edison was also included. And based on feedback from the PACT process, this plan is revised to take a more conservative approach, a more wait and see how well this responds to our changes in demographics. One of the issues that was raised was addressing the downtown and the river corridor area and the impact of the retiring of that many facilities. So what this does is it takes, like I said, a more conservative approach. It allows the school district to wait until Phase 2 to see if those same sorts of predictions come true. If our enrollment predictions remain on target, that's a decision that the board can entertain at that time. If there are changes, and it's very likely that there will be some changes, it allows the board to reconsider building configuration in Phase 2. Plans, by their nature, working living documents. While they're put together with the best information that we have in the time, when it's time to look at subsequent phases, it's important to see if if the conditions warrant the particular items, or if they need to be revised. So that's, I believe, an overview of Phase 1. One thing I should mention, I would imagine that to implement Phase 1 would take, if you were, for instance, to receive approval in spring of 2012, I would imagine that 2014, 2015, that time frame, Phase 1 should be mostly complete, to give you a sort of a time parameter, time window. Phase 2. One of the big changes that you'll notice about Phase 2 is that this, by moving it to 3 phases, it allows us to make the change from a 7-8 middle school configuration to 6-8 middle school in one phase. You'll recall that in the previous plan, Lake was shown as, I think it was, I forget the exact word. Pilot, thank you. Pilot middle school, and that the balance of the middle school conversion occurred in Phase 3. This now all allows for the conversion from 7-8 to 6-8 in Phase 2. It also reduces the number of times students are being redistricted, which is also another one of the goals that was heard during the PACT planning process. One of the other significant changes, I think Kevin noted, was the feedback that was received about Bodie, and that Bodie was a facility that should continue to be invested in terms of the St. Joseph School District. With Bodie being a part of the plan and Lake no longer being a part of we heard feedback that it didn't make a great pilot middle school. Its location was not ideal, and it shouldn't be considered. So the change that we propose in this plan is that we will construct, or we propose that the school district construct a new South Middle School for 550 students. So that's the other change that you see in Phase 2. Spring Garden becomes repurposed to be a new high, just as it did in the draft master plan. Pickett becomes repurposed to become a new middle school, just like it did in the draft master plan. Spring Garden is renovated. Parkway is the only elementary school to have a classroom addition. Bodie, Rubidoux, Truman, and Pickett are all renovated and have small additions to allow them to have the educational program and meet the program standard that was developed by Dr. Franklin Hill, so that we have equitable programs across the district. And then finally, retire, again, Hyde, Lake, and Edison are included at this point, but as I noted earlier, it's important to remember that those decisions will come when it's time to implement subsequent phases, to make sure if the situations still warrant. Phase 3, nothing is built new. The renovation, again, this is where the high schools are renovated comprehensively. And what I mean by that is most of our school facilities are designed on the one-size-fits-all classroom model. And your staff is teaching in a variety of ways. We know that students learn in a variety of ways. And so what I mean by a comprehensive remodel is creating a variety of learning environments that accommodate the way teachers want to teach and the way students learn effectively. The expansion of the last 2 elementary schools occurs in Phase 6 at Ellison and Twain, and nothing is retired. So at the end of the 3-phase master plan, you end up with 12 elementary schools, Coleman, Ellison, Field, Hosea, a new Hyde, which is the Spring Garden that's repurposed, Lindbergh, Mark Twain, Parkway, Pershing, Skate, a new Midtown Elementary School, and a new Northeast Elementary School. You end up with 5 middle schools, Bodie, Rubidoux, Pickett, Truman, and a new South Middle School. And your high school configuration remains the same, with 2 smaller high schools, Benton and Lafayette, and the larger high school, Central. I'm also happy to tell you that because of the revisions, we have reduced the first costs of the overall plan. You'll recall the draft master plan had an overall first cost of the 3 phases of $229 million. And because the time frame has been compressed from 4 phases to 3, you will save long-term in life cycle costs $10 million, from $490,000 to $480,000. You see, when we spread out the work and send more of it into the future, it will actually raise our costs long-term. So by doing a significant portion in Phase 1, as was the same logic in the draft master plan, but then changing from 4 phases to 3, you actually save the district $10 million over a 30-year time frame. And then the final slide compares a number of different, just 3 different options. You always have to think about maintaining the status quo. Use that as your baseline, if you will. If you remained with 23 schools, and you did nothing but maintain your investment through triage and 10 work, you would have a $439 million 30-year investment. If you were to try and provide the educational benefit of this draft master plan and continue to use the existing buildings, so you would build some additions to the existing buildings to provide the same educational program as the draft master plan, you would actually see the highest cost because you're not seeing any operational savings and you're adding construction costs. That's why we feel that the draft master plan is absolutely the strongest option. By matching facilities with enrollment projections and an educational program that was developed by the national consultant, Dr. Franklin Hill, and the operational savings of 23 facilities to 20, you can spend what is close to the same for doing nothing and have the superior educational environment. And so that's why I feel this is the strongest plan for the district moving forward, helping you to, it's better because it has been revised to be informed by the community, broader community input, and I believe that if you follow this, it's a step that will help you secure your community's educational future. Now I think it's time to turn it over to Dr. Rod Wright.
I was going to say I like following Sam because he and I are about the same height, and they don't make me look so short, but he got applause, so I'm not sure I want to follow him now, but pretty sure I won't get applause. I'm here to talk to you about the tracking survey that we recently completed, and I know we're probably going a little long, so I'll try to run through this fairly quickly, and I don't have all the data in front of you, but a short survey, and let me cover the results. The field work was done in early December. We did 400 interviews, much like the tracking survey we did last summer. Margin of error is about 5%, plus or minus 5% at the 95% confidence interval. First question on the survey was kind of a warm-up question, just asking people whether the community was moving in the right, wrong direction, or they could volunteer mixed. You see the results. About 45% said the right direction, about 30% said wrong, with the rest either not knowing or saying mixed. Very quickly getting to the question that I'm sure you're most interested in is we ask about, at this point in time, a $90 million bond proposal. The survey was being done simultaneously with the development of the second, or with the changes in the facility plan. What I need to explain to you about this chart, it's a little confusing. We decided to do a split sample to see if amount made any difference. And so you can see the question, which was asking people about a $90 million bond proposal, but half the sample was asking about a $76 million bond proposal. In the first column, you see the results overall, and in the second and third column, you see it split out by whether they ask about a $90 million bond proposal or a $76 million bond proposal. And you can see it made, outside of sampling error, a pretty darn big difference of better than 10%, right at 10%. Where 41.5% was total favor for the 90, and 51.7 for the 76 million. And let me just take a minute to talk about that.